So, who remembers 2016? Remember when we thought that was going to be the worst year ever? LOL. Throughout 2020, I've seen a number of people post on social media at different points throughout the year, sort of saying what's going on in the world at that particular moment, because it's been very crazy and it'll be something to look back on. So this is my version of that. This is a complete guide to what happened in 2020 and what a shit show of a year it was. And just so you know, it's a massive shit show. So this is long. This is the first of 3 parts looking back at the 2020 shit show. So open yourselves a can of the Great British Pop and join me on a deep dive into 2020. Which you remember started back in the start of the year. The government declared that pub workers and, more shockingly, care workers were classified as low-skilled jobs. So in case you missed any of the rest of the year, let's see how that panned out. In fact, when you start to write a summary of 2020, you realise quite how ridiculous the start of the year seems by the end of it. The heated row back in January, the big thing of primary vital concern to the government, was whether we would be able to raise the money to make Big Ben go bong as we completed Brexit on January the 31st. And the debate that followed that about whether the phrase fiddling while Rome burned should be updated to trying to make Big Ben go bong while Australia burns. Also in January, Prince Harry and Meghan Markle were trying to set new rules for the press, which particularly incensed the Daily Mail, who also ran a story about conditions of farming avocados in January under the headline, "Is Meghan's favourite snack fueling drought and murders?" Adding, what? Why do they get to set the rules for the press? Just because the press suggests the black one is a killer because she quite likes avocado? Look, I'm all for the Culture Secretary's suggestion that The Crown should carry a warning saying it's fiction on Netflix. But I do think the same should apply to the Daily Mail and The Sun. Harry and Meghan also decided before the rest of us did that now would probably be a good time to put some distance between themselves and their elderly relatives, so moved to America. Some people suggested that it was a betrayal of the Queen and she was powerless to prevent it, but she's a 93-year-old woman. She could have just gone, no, you do what you want. I don't want to be a burden. It's the most powerful weapon any grandmother has, and they know it. She could easily have deployed it at any moment. Boris Johnson and Dominic Cummings were trying to decide who should be the next BBC chairman, which with hindsight would really have helped them out in April, but it's a bit like asking the guy from the local Chinese that's just been closed down who they want to run the Food Standards Hygiene Agency. Then, after it had been lurking in the background since the start of the year, disaster struck. At this point, it's unclear whether I'm talking about COVID, Donald Trump, racial injustice, or Dominic Cummings, but surprise twist, it was all of them. 2020 has been a truly mad, remarkable year. While the first 18 COVIDs were nothing much to worry about, COVID-1 was the millennium bug, COVID-2 was a slight itch, COVID-3 was a niggling feeling you should really be watching Game of Thrones like everyone else, COVID-4 to 7 were the taste of aniseed you couldn't get rid of, COVID-8 was the feeling it was too late to get into Game of Thrones now, COVID-9 to 12 were 1G to 4G mobile phone coverage, COVID-13 was that time that all the Spurs teams shat themselves in 2006. COVID-14 to 17 were that feeling you should have done something with your life now. COVID-18 was the feeling of someone who's just seen the end of Game of Thrones. But COVID-19 was definitely worse than the end of Game of Thrones. And I do not say that lightly. From the start, the big question has been, will the NHS cope? One of the first headlines to take it seriously was the Daily Mail, whose front page read, "Train nurses to perform surgery." And you'll have spotted the obvious mistake there. They're called engineers, not trained nurses. Trains don't have nurses. In South Korea, we saw pictures of queues of hundreds of people to get a face mask, which at the time we thought was the most counterproductive thing of the whole virus. But you have to remember that Boris Johnson hadn't yet spoken on the matter, so more counterproductive stuff would come. I mean, there had been several hugely important Cobra meetings by then, but you know how it is when you're the Prime Minister. Do you really have time for emergency meetings that take place in your own home? Not when there's the EU to negotiate a deal with, so at least that worked out well, I hope. It really started to affect us in this country in March though. That's when it got big here, with many people cancelling holidays, plans, meetings and sporting events. The sporting events that didn't cancel faced heavy criticisms, as the huge risks of the virus spread. Both the Cheltenham Festival and the nationwide live version of Supermarket Sweep went ahead in March 2020. That was a shame on two counts because 1, it spread the virus, and 2, it was not a good year for the England team at the Supermarket Sweep UK-wide live event, as the team accidentally bought all the toilet rolls, which turned out not to be on Dale Winton's star prize list. A spokesman said it was the worst performance since the diarrhea-laden Tottenham team of 2006 bought 1,000 face masks. As the Supermarket Sweep World Championships intensified, some of us, those whose intellects are more only connect, or heck, even people who are clever enough at tipping point, were still not buying everything in the shops. And so, to make sure there was enough for all of the Supermarket Sweep contestants, signs started appearing in shops asking us to only buy 4 of any one item. But they weren't that strict on it. In fact, in Co-op, someone said I was wasting their time when I opened a bag of crisps and took 1 salted, 1 cheese and onion and 2 salt and vinegar crisps out of the bag. You try to do your bit. Panic buying swept the nation. The first person to be furloughed was the person on the 6 items or less queue. Just no work for them. As pressure mounted for these sporting events to be cancelled, Italy stepped up and were the first to cancel all sporting events, partly because of their concerns about COVID and partly because they're the only team that's never won the Six Nations, so they might as well. The government decided first to give herd immunity a go, and then if that didn't work, they would follow some science. Herd immunity, if you don't know, is basically where you turn the London Underground into one of those parties that parents take their kids to give them chickenpox. But before long, and with that kind of obviously not working, this was becoming the norm. People sat presenting to you on TV in front of their bookshelves, occasionally interrupted by their cats, who's not going to do it now, but she did it when I was trying to rehearse this a minute ago. For many of us, the first time we took this seriously was when they announced that the new James Bond film, No Time to Die, was moved back from its April release date. As it turned out, April was a very likely time to die. But the hour of elderly and NHS workers shopping did lead to Heist Movie of the Year, as Michael Caine, David Jason and Richard Wilson played 3 elderly men recruited to buy billions of toilet rolls in the first hour for the black market, with David Suchet as the store detective one day away from retirement when he gets struck down by nobody wearing a mask. In fact, a lot of movies and TV shows had to change, with many TV shows being filmed without a live audience or from the participants' homes, while the new series of The X Factor, hosted by Steve Jones, saw D-list celebrities forced to sing wearing elaborate masks. It was odd to see comedians on Have I Got News For You and The Daily Show make jokes to absolute silence, but business as usual for The James Corden Show. While the newspapers kept comparing this to World War II when soap was rationed, that was slightly undercut by the fact that this time around soap operas were rationed, with less episodes shown each week to preserve stocks of recorded episodes. Something that in normal circumstances would take place over the course of a week now played out over a fortnight in Coronation Street, while something that in the real world would take a week lasted for 4 bloody months in The Archers, and that's before they cut the episodes down from every single day. Things went from bad to worse as Tom Hanks became the latest victim of the coronavirus, and all seemed lost. Once again, selfish people rushed to HMV to panic buy all his films, and the really vulnerable elderly who hadn't seen Toy Story 3 yet lost out. It should be noted that Toy Story 3 should not be shown to people with pre-existing medical conditions, as the final scene might just kill them. Before I go on, can I just check? Has anyone noticed that coronavirus sounds similar to the name of Corona beer? I was thinking of making a joke about that, but I'm really worried I'd be the only one to make a joke about it, and nobody would get it because it's a little obscure. Only joking. Please, for the love of God, stop making that joke. Now things started getting serious in my neck of the woods in Welwyn Garden City, when it turned out that a second-hand car dealer had tested positive for coronavirus and gone into work. Now, a second-hand car dealer giving you something you don't need in your life and didn't ask for, and leaving you the forecourt wondering if this was worth it at all, might not seem like news, but it was a sign of things to come. So the government moved from the do sod all for a month phase of their plan into the delay phase. This was again exciting news for us locally in Welwyn Garden City, as our local MP Grant Shapps would be sure to be involved, as he's the Transport Secretary, and causing horrendous delays is kind of his thing. As Australia closed their borders, there was a shortage of Border Patrol episodes on Pick TV, and those of us with nothing to do in the afternoon needed something new to watch. At which point a new game show called Daily Briefing started airing on BBC One. The show replaced Money for Nothing, which I was disappointed to see being dropped from the schedules, but I've got to say, in the end, the Daily Briefing was actually a positive thing for fans of recycling and rehashing any old shit. It was around this point that we realised this was less like 28 Days Later and more like Dad's Army. You had Boris Johnson as Captain Mannering, full of his own self-importance, going, "Nonsense, Wilson! I shook hands with every COVID patient in that hospital. No foreign germs are going to infect our patriotic British hands." The Chief Medical Officer and 2021 Strictly Dead Cert Sir Chris Whitty was there like Sergeant Wilson going, "Do you really think that's wise, sir?" Then there's the British media like Corporal Jones going, "Don't panic, 400 cases, don't panic. New cases rises to 401, don't panic. Nothing like this since the Blitz, don't panic." Then the media are also getting all judgmental at the people they're panicked into who are walking around Tesco like Private Fraser saying, "We're doomed." While Private Godfrey is only looking for one pack of toilet paper going, "Do you think I could use the conveniences?" Finally, the rest of the UK sport took notice, as the government took responsibility and did absolutely nothing, leading the FA to take responsibility for the nation's health and cancel all professional football games, as well as those played by Tottenham. Nobody was safe from this virus. Justin Trudeau was the first world leader to start self-isolating after someone he met at a fancy dress party once commented that he was looking paler than he remembered. At the end of March, the government realised that people going to pubs, restaurants, cinemas and theatres was spreading COVID, and that these venues had closed their doors across Europe. The government took a very sensible decision not to close these venues in the UK, but instead just to tell everyone to stay away from them, forcing pubs to work out a minefield of problems with rapidly declining profits, but not actually closing them like everyone else in Europe had done, because we didn't leave Europe just to have to do some very sensible stuff. Now things started getting serious in my neck of the woods in Welwyn Garden City, when it turned out that a second-hand car dealer had tested positive for coronavirus and gone into work. Now, a second-hand car dealer giving you something you don't need in your life and didn't ask for, and leaving you the forecourt wondering if this was worth it at all, might not seem like news, but it was a sign of things to come. So the government moved from the do sod all for a month phase of their plan into the delay phase. This was again exciting news for us locally in Welwyn Garden City, as our local MP Grant Shapps would be sure to be involved, as he's the Transport Secretary and causing horrendous delays is kind of his thing. As Australia closed their borders, there was a shortage of Border Patrol episodes on Pick TV, and those of us with nothing to do in the afternoon needed something new to watch. At which point a new game show called Daily Briefing started airing on BBC One. The show replaced Money for Nothing, which I was disappointed to see being dropped from the schedules, but I've got to say, in the end, the Daily Briefing was actually a positive thing for fans of recycling and rehashing any old shit. It was around this point that we realised this was less like 28 Days Later and more like Dad's Army. You had Boris Johnson as Captain Mannering, full of his own self-importance, going, "Nonsense, Wilson! I shook hands with every COVID patient in that hospital. No foreign germs are going to infect our patriotic British hands." The Chief Medical Officer and 2021 Strictly Dead Cert Sir Chris Whitty was there like Sergeant Wilson going, "Do you really think that's wise, sir?" Then there's the British media like Corporal Jones going, "Don't panic, 400 cases, don't panic. New cases rises to 401, don't panic. Nothing like this since the Blitz, don't panic." Then the media are also getting all judgmental at the people they're panicked into who are walking around Tesco like Private Fraser saying, "We're doomed." While Private Godfrey is only looking for one pack of toilet paper going, "Do you think I could use the conveniences?" Finally, the rest of the UK sport took notice, as the government took responsibility and did absolutely nothing, leading the FA to take responsibility for the nation's health and cancel all professional football games, as well as those played by Tottenham. Nobody was safe from this virus. Justin Trudeau was the first world leader to start self-isolating, after someone he once met at a fancy dress party commented he was looking paler than he remembered. By the end of March, the government realised that people going to pubs, restaurants, cinemas and theatres were spreading COVID. These venues had already closed their doors across a number of European countries, so the government here took the very sensible decision not to close these venues, but instead just to tell everyone to stay away from them, forcing pubs to work out a minefield of problems with rapidly declining profits, but not actually closing them like everyone else in Europe, because we didn't leave the EU just to have to do their very sensible stuff. Eventually, of course, pubs were told to close, and everyone was placed on furlough or told to work from home if they could. While this was not so bad for me as a pub worker, it must have been fucking terrifying for paranormal investigators and ghost hunters to work from home. I feel like a member of Anonymous. Partly because I'm obscured in darkness and you can't really see my face and I've got a big hood. But mostly because I'm talking absolute shit about politics I have no idea about on the internet. With everyone working from home, the train service went down to a Sunday-style service all week. That's just one train every 1 or 2 hours. It's not yet known how Southern Rail dealt with such a huge increase in traffic on their network. There was a second spike in panic buying as all of the hospitality industry were suddenly forced to buy a Mother's Day present for the first time in years, as it was the first time ever they were not working it. Then we got a heat wave, and visitors flocked to Skegness, which The Guardian described as a disaster waiting to happen. It's unclear whether this refers to COVID or just Skegness in general. The government clarified that it was okay for people to leave their homes for one form of exercise a day. Acceptable forms of exercise included going for a walk, going for a run, or riding a bike. But it was deemed unacceptable for an adult to ride a scooter. Again, that's not COVID related, that's just some general advice. Many people decided to do the Couch to 5k challenge. But I've got to say, after 4 months sitting on my couch, I still don't have my $5,000. Bullshit. The Guardian reported that Dominic Cummings denied that he said, "let old people die" in relation to coronavirus. Which is one of those denials that's a bit like if I said, "would you like some hummus? It's very good," and I definitely deny that I dipped my balls in it. Would you eat that hummus? Cummings did later clarify that his comments were not in relation to coronavirus. Which does make you kind of wonder, what did he say "let old people die" in relation to? Fortunately, no old people would have been alerted to his plans to kill them, as he cancelled all old people's free TV licences. The BBC cancelled old people's free TV licences. The BBC did that. The BBC did that. Dominic Cummings advised if I say it enough times, maybe it will be true. Fruit and veg were in danger of running out unless British people went and picked it for ourselves or stopped eating it. Like most, I chose the latter. So then April rolled around, and it started with some sad news as April Fool's Day was cancelled due to COVID. And that wasn't the only thing. ITV announced that the British Soap Awards with Philip Schofield were also cancelled, which seems a little ungrateful in the year we've all been told to wash our hands like never before. I personally was washing my hands like never before. Sometimes almost every single time I went to the toilet. You had to wash your hands for the amount of time it took to sing Happy Birthday. But further scandal arose when it turned out Stevie Wonder had not received a penny in royalties from this scheme. Come on guys, that song is like 6 minutes long. We were washing our hands for 12 minutes at a time, and the guy didn't receive a penny. In fact, being a leap year, the real reason for singing Happy Birthday twice is actually a conspiracy by the Conservative Party to give everyone born on February the 29th a whole load of extra birthdays to balance the numbers. Look, please don't have a go at me about how that makes no sense. It makes as much sense as that shit you shared about 5G. In the US, Donald Trump was still talking about the economy and that the cure can't be worse than the disease. So Bill Gates stepped in to tell him to shut down the economy. But to be fair, switch it off and on again is his solution to everything. In America, things were getting really strange. A televangelist went on TV to blow the wind of God at the coronavirus. Turns out the night before he'd eaten the curry of God. Donald Trump, meanwhile, thought that the best response to the pandemic was to cut funding to the WHO, World Health Organization. The same way one might see a Thanos leading a bunch of alien killing machines to Earth and cut funding to the Avengers Initiative. Why do I say a Thanos? In fact, being a leap year, the real reason for singing Happy Birthday twice is actually a conspiracy by the Conservative Party to give everyone born on February the 29th a whole load of extra birthdays to balance the numbers. Look, please don't have a go at me about how that makes no sense. It makes as much sense as that shit you shared about 5G. In the US, Donald Trump was still talking about the economy and saying the cure can't be worse than the disease. So Bill Gates stepped in to tell him to shut down the economy. But to be fair, switch it off and on again is his solution to everything. In America, things were getting really strange. A televangelist went on TV to blow the wind of God at the coronavirus. Turns out the night before he'd eaten the curry of God. Donald Trump, meanwhile, thought that the best response to the pandemic was to cut funding to the WHO, or World Health Organization, the same way one might see Thanos leading a bunch of alien killing machines to Earth and cut funding for the Avengers Initiative. Many could have interpreted it that your government just didn't care about you. But luckily it turns out your bank, Amazon Prime, and your broadband supplier really did care about you. Because now comes the really fucking gross part, the sympathetic adverts that start with the phrase, "In these uncertain times, big company that normally treats you like shit is here for you." From Virgin Media's advert of a bunch of kids singing "Nothing's Going to Stop Us Now," in what, I don't say this lightly, might be the worst thing involving a bunch of kids since Rolf Harris. Meanwhile, Nationwide found the smuggest couple in Great Britain to read a poem about how they were so happy their wedding had to be postponed due to COVID, while the rest of us at home got paralytic by 2 p.m. playing a drinking game where we had to down a shot every time someone in an advert pretended that they had their microphone on mute, thinking it was cute. The Queen did a new episode of her Christmas message especially, all filmed in her own home of course, where she told us that everything was fine and that there was nothing to worry about, and a sense of calm descended over the nation. For about 20 minutes before Boris Johnson got rushed to hospital, Captain Tom Moore was ordered by Dominic Cummings to break into a light jog to make sure the NHS could keep going. With everyone forced to admit that it was a bit bad to be mean to Boris Johnson until we know he'd pull through, we had to look elsewhere for people to hate. And luckily, that's when the internet started circulating a meme of Sam Smith crying because they weren't coping well in lockdown. The meme compared Smith to Captain Tom Moore, heroically walking around in his garden to save the NHS. Because bullying someone for the state of their mental health during a pandemic seems cruel when it comes from you, but if you can imply that a war hero thinks it, even though he absolutely didn't, and is better man than that, well, that might take the sting off your bullying a bit, mightn't it? Captain Tom Moore is obviously a hero and absolutely incredible, but don't use his brilliant heroism as a way of attacking those people who are struggling with this. People's lives and their worlds have been turned upside down by this. People have been unable to see family, friends and loved ones. The usual way of life has stopped and many people have lost regular counselling for mental health difficulties. Don't ever attack people who are struggling with this for having a hard time. Captain Tom Moore proves how great human beings can be towards each other. Now you do the same. Support those who are crying in crisis. Don't attack them. That wasn't the only celebrity news though, and fortunately some more of it was a bit funnier, as Gal Gadot brought together a whole ton of celebrities to sing Imagine by John Lennon, in something I hate more than that Virgin Media advert, and it seems like the whole world hated it too. A bunch of celebrity posers singing Imagine in their luxury mansions is all we need right now, grumbled the British public, and went back to watching the One World Together at Home concert, which was definitely a different thing and everyone loved it. And once more, we turned to TV to keep us going during lockdown. We'd all watched Tiger King at this point, and over Easter weekend we were glued to a drama quiz about the Who Wants to Be a Millionaire scandal. So for a long weekend we took our minds of this whole COVID mess by watching a drama about a man with a persistent cough. Novak Djokovic came out as anti-vaccination, which while definitely bullshit led to the headline No Vax. So on this occasion I approve. Kai Van Novak, you get a free pass too. It's around this time that you were nominated to do a 10 albums in 10 days that changed your life, and you did it for 4 days. Back in the USA, Donald Trump found a way to kickstart the economy by betting the whole economy that he could say, maybe you should drink Dettol to kill the virus, to the face of a medical expert. Sadly, the entire economy sank again when Trump double or quits bet that he could get whiter teeth by drinking Mr. Sheen furniture polish, but cracked a smile. With Boris not back yet to do the daily briefings, it was Priti Patel's turn to guest host. This time she bragged that shoplifting is down compared to the previous year, in the middle of all the shops in the country being closed. She also reported that food poisoning in British restaurants was down, drug use at rock concerts was in decline, and loitering was at an all-time low.